That's all right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host, Mark Iorio. I've got Mark Stile with me today. Mark is the founding principal at On the Mark Advisors. Welcome to the program, man. Great to have you. Great to have you.
Happy to be here, Mark, and thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
I love it. I love it. So you and I have chatted a few times, and I love the whole idea of you being a business therapist, man, because a lot of people go at it like they're coaches, and they and I'm not knocking. Listen, I think it's cool. Everybody's got a slot, right?
Yep.
But as a business therapist, tell us a little bit about that. What does that entail? How do you kind of go about like the discovery process, Mark, with a new client?
So let me just get one thing straight, Mark, that even though therapist is in the name, there are no couches involved.
Good, because I don't have one here.
Well, maybe we will talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So business therapy is the integration of three distinct but related disciplines.
Okay.
Strategic advising, business coaching, and stress counseling. And so you're right, most coaches, advisors, consultants really focus in one of those areas. Mm-hmm. I haven't met too many that are multidimensional and go for all three.
Right.
And what I've noticed, a lot of small business owners that I know have to hire multiple people to help them because they're each focused in a different area.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so with me, you get the whole enchilada in one.
The whole Monty, the full Monty.
The full Monty, indeed.
So if you were to, what brought you to this point, I guess? I guess the career path that you've taken, right? What brought you to On the Market? How did you kind of get to the point where you felt like, yeah, this is the thing I want to do, and this is how I want to help others, right?
Yeah, good question. So for 30 years, I slayed dragons in the corporate and startup world. and I served in leadership positions and senior roles in a number of different market-leading companies in various industries. And I also helped take two startups, one pre-revenue and one barely revenue, both to market-leading positions in their respective industries. And so I've been very fortunate, and I'm grateful that I've had this wonderful experience with a lot of successful companies, learning a lot of best practices and toolkits that really can apply to any type of business. During that time, I developed a reputation among my colleagues as a very good mentor and coach. And I had people coming to me from all over the organization, from entry level to C-suite, asking my advice on various things.
Yeah.
And so I help people with achieving results on their projects, building effective teams, even helping them get job promotions. And so, and the most frequent comment I got was, gee, have you thought about doing a second career? This is amazing advice.
Yeah.
And so 3 years ago, I said, well, now's the time. I'm not only going to make this my second career, I'm going to make this my first career. And hence the business therapy practice. So
you go from Sir Lancelot slaying dragons to a therapist. That's pretty sweet, man. That's not bad.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, look at take me for example. What would you do? There are couches around here, by the way. The studio's big. It's got a lot of sets on it. So I'm not going to get on one of those couches and have you kind of analyze what's going on with me or my business. But let's talk about that for a minute. How would you go about it?
Sure. So, Mark, I don't know you that well.
Right.
But what I do know is that you are very prolific. You're in a number of different businesses. You're in a number of different activities. You've got the Mega Group. You've got BCAT. You've got this show.
Right.
You've got other shows that you co-host.
Yep.
You've got nonprofit work that you do.
Yep.
So what I would do as a business therapist is we would sit down for a long chat about each of these activities and how they contribute to your North Star and your values. And that's really the difference between what maybe a coach would do versus what I do. A coach might say, well, let's just say illustratively that this show doesn't bring you in a ton of, doesn't give you a lot of financial gain versus the other things you're doing.
Right.
They would say, maybe you ought to jettison this and focus your efforts on where you're getting the most financial gain. But I would go deeper and say, you know what? Maybe that's not your North Star. Maybe your North Star is something else. And this activity or another activity might be giving you some psychic energy and defines your success differently than maybe the traditional way of doing it.
And you'd be right. You would be 100% right, Mark. The reason I do the things that I do is to help others. My North Star is, I imagine my mom looking down on me from heaven and saying, you've done well, my friend. You've done well. Because what I like doing is, whether it's this show, right, and having Mark Stile talk about what you do, I always felt like it's way better for me to ask you questions about what you do than to have you sit in front of a camera like that and tell the world what you do, right? So hosts don't get paid for this. I do this because I love doing it, and I feel like I do a pretty good job, of getting information out of my guests. The work that I do with TDI Connect, the nonprofit, we have volunteers that come in and refurbish computers and, give those out to people who are in need. BCAT helps teams become better versions of themselves. So it's all about that. That's the North Star. So I know it was kind of a quick therapy session, but that's where my North Star is. So that's the kind of thing that I see you do for your clients.
Exactly.
And that's cool.
Exactly. And sometimes business intersects with personal. How
can it not, really?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of the things as a stress counselor, there's a lot of adversity that people are experiencing. They may have an imposter syndrome. There are things that a traditional coach might not be working with. And because I've experienced a number of, a lot of adversity in my life, I have learned how to deal with it effectively.
Yeah.
And I like nothing better than to share that with others and allow them to do that effectively as well, which, if something's happening in someone's personal life, that affects their business life. So that's the multidimensional approach that we're talking about.
Yeah. When you, what's the, I can imagine what the answer to this is, Mark, but when you work with a client, right, and you feel like you've gotten into their mindset, their soul, their psyche, you're talking about what exactly it is that drives them, what's that do for you?
Oh, that is, now you've hit on my North Star. So my North Star is helping others solve problems. And so the way I've learned in my experience the best way to solve the problem is to go as deep as needed to get to that root and then bring it back up and have a solution that involves, again, it could be activities, it could be habits, it could be just a new mindset. All of these things, multidimensional, for someone to reach what their definition of success is, right? To get from their point A to their point B. And that's the difference I think I make, is I go and look at what does success mean to you, not what does success mean to the world and what, the media says success is or what your friends say the success is.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Where do you think that comes from? What, if you look back on your, on who you are, how Mark Stile's built, where does that come from?
Well, I got to tell you, I've always been relentlessly motivated to achieve something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the story if we have time later. In high school, I had I did a job and earned money, and I learned a lot from that job, and it made me want to go into business. Went into a nice business school, and since then, like for the first 20 years of my career, my relentless goal was climb that ladder, make that money,
Yep.
be successful,
Yep.
and that's what success means, and that will make me happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you know what's coming next. Those things were good, and they
know.
did make me happy to some extent.
Yeah.
But now that I'm wiser and older and grayer, I realize that there's other things to life.
Yeah.
And hence I left that corporate world and I'm doing something that I really love now.
Yeah.
And I love nothing more than to see the people's faces light up when they realize it hits them that they've got this incredibly bright future if they're able to work the plan after we plan the work.
Yeah. Take us. That's so. I love hearing that because, it. I don't know that I don't know that age matters. I don't know that our collective wisdom matters. But there's a point in time in your life where you say to yourself, "This isn't doing it for me." It really isn't. And you hit that spot, probably a long time ago, right? So, I'm sure you've got dozens and dozens of case studies to share, really proud moments where you've said to people, I'm going to help you, and 6 months or a year later, you've helped them transform their lives. There's got to be some stories that you could share with us.
How much time do we have, Mark? Sure.
Fire away, man. We'll extend this.
Going into
They
overtime.
might kick us off this set, but we'll extend it.
All right, and we'll go into the couch.
Yeah,
over
we'll
there.
go. Right, we'll go over there.
So I guess the first client that I ever got, it was almost an accident. It's actually what led me to realize that I have this gift and I need to do this. So the first client I ever got, an acquaintance of mine, we were just having a conversation, saying, "What's up? What's going on?" Oh, well, and she's a very successful business owner, thought leader in her industry, sterling reputation. And she said, I'm having some issues. I realize I'm working this killer schedule. Every dollar I earn, I've got to be part of that. And she was realizing what I was realizing, like it's not all this. My family, vacation, free time to do stuff, I don't have any of that. So I'm going to this conference and I'm going to learn about how I can do better in my business. My goal is I want to reduce my time in the business and hopefully maintain most of my income.
Sure.
That's her goal.
Yeah.
I said to her, have you ever thought about doing a recurring revenue model? Because you could get a monthly fee from people that follow you, that love you, hold master classes, deliver premium content, and do an occasional group session or individual session, maybe at a different tier.
Sure.
You know what her response was?
I've been thinking about that for a long time.
No. Maybe it was, that's the most brilliant idea I've ever heard, Mark.
Wow.
And she uses multiple coaches.
Wow.
That's when I realized I got this gift.
Yeah.
And on the spot, she said, "Will you please be my coach?"
Wow. Wow.
Right before I came up with the business therapy
Yeah,
concept. And so since then, she's been able to reduce her time in her business, take vacations, which she hadn't taken in years,
Yeah.
spend time with her family.
Oh, that's great.
And not only that, but the byproduct was she doubled her revenue,
Wow.
which, that was like an extra added bonus.
Right, exactly. That's
So
great.
that's my,
That's a great story. See, that's a great story. I love hearing that because, people get all stressed out. I could tell you a story offline about a fellow that I just talked to that sold his business, and he had family members just glomming off him for so long, and he finally, just sold the business. But that story is wonderful. We're going to have to take a quick commercial break, Mark. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsors, folks. Don't go away. I've got more with Mark Stile after this message.
All right, ladies, that is a wrap for today's Talk 65.
Now that we're done filming, we wanted to talk to you directly. Do you have any questions about maybe some of the topics you've seen on one of our shows?
Or are you new to Medicare or just need help understanding your options for Medigap, Medicare Advantage, or prescription drug coverage?
Annette, Patricia, and myself are licensed health insurance brokers that specialize in everything Medicare. So give us a call. We're here to help.
Cheesy grooves. Flavor, flavor, flavor! Crunch! Cheesy grooves. So much flavor, it's a mind crunch.
Let's face it, lawyers get a bad rap. I'm Erin Brucey, host of Legal Breakdown, where we dissect legal topics for the everyday viewer, with a mix of interesting guests to talk about current events and hot legal topics. Let's work together to make the law accessible and relevant to everyone. Catch us every week on RVN television.
Welcome back to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host, Mark Iorio, and I'm with Mark Stile. Mark is the founding principal and business therapist on the Mark. Where'd that come from?
Well, it was kind of a play on my name a little bit. I like to think that my advice is on the mark.
Brilliant, man. That was brilliant.
That was the easiest question you gave me so far.
Take us through. So that case study you gave us right before the break was really cool. And so, are you still working with this this executive?
A little bit less so because she's now.
Yeah, but she's doing a lot better.
Yeah, and that's actually a good segue because I don't. When I work with people,
Yeah.
I get them to where they need to be,
Exactly,
and then
yeah.
when they don't need, I exit out.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a lifetime thing here, right?
Yeah, no, of course not. No, that's the last thing you want is to hang on and then have them say, "Oh my God, am I writing this guy another check every month?"
Right.
No, you bring them to a point where they realize that you've helped them transform their lives, right?
Exactly.
Any better? It doesn't get any better.
Right, and I am I'm the least hard sell person there is. People when they come to me, they've made that decision.
Right, of course.
And when I think it's time to, I'll say, I think we've accomplished our goal.
Yeah.
There are other things we could work on, but we accomplished the main goal.
Yeah.
So I like to let them go and say, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay
right.
to go.
Yeah, you're on your own now, and that's great. Take us back, all right? So let's pretend that you're the host and you're sitting here next to a younger Mark Stile or a person who pretty much followed a similar pathway, right? What advice would you give him or her?
Well, if it was me, I would say, gosh, I should have become a business therapist a lot sooner.
Yeah. Even with the experience that you had, though, did you feel like you had enough experience as a younger person to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I wouldn't say way further. Like I'd say
Okay.
maybe 5-10 years ago
Okay.
versus 20
okay.
30 years ago.
Yep.
I think I was prepared to do this at that point. But you're right. I couldn't have done that
When you were 25.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I graduate college, I'm going to be a life coach.
Yeah, right. No one's going to listen to you.
Right, exactly. So that's the first thing. I probably would have done this earlier.
Okay.
The second thing is, again, back to the relentless list. When I was in my 20s and 30s, again, trying to get to that, climbing that ladder, I would have taken more time, smell the roses, enjoy your family, enjoy your friends, enjoy your hobbies.
Yeah.
Gee, do I really have to work the whole weekend to get something in ahead of schedule and ahead of budget? Or could I have, done something fun? Like that's
Exactly.
the thing.
Yeah. So in that same vein, think about the things that you do. And I don't want to call them mistakes because they're not mistakes. They're either missteps or you took a pathway that might have been different. What did you learn from that has helped you now as a business therapist?
Yeah. So there's always a level of risk with every decision that's made. And
True.
I think I didn't learn until probably late 30s, 40s that to really assess that risk in a reasonable, meaningful way. You know, there's high risk, low reward, which, you know, when you're young, you don't even worry about that. And then there's, you know, there's lower risk but lower reward, and that's what I do with my clients a lot too. It's like, what if you take this initiative? Okay, you need to make this investment. The probability of success is this. Here are some obstacles that either exist today or environmental that could come up. We just got to assess it and understand that, yeah, there's a chance this might not work. But as long as we go in with our eyes wide open and say, okay, well, you know, I'm taking this risk. It's not guaranteed. And a lot of coaches might say, yeah, you do this, you will succeed.
Right.
I guarantee you, pay me a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, that's another difference I think I have is I calibrate based on the risk, and I make sure that my clients, and for me, myself, know exactly what we're getting into, that we've looked at all the possibilities that could happen, bad and good.
I think when you're younger and you don't really understand how to mitigate risk, I think you throw caution to the wind oftentimes.
Absolutely.
And so it's high risk, you know, sometimes low reward, and you find yourself losing either lots of money or lots of time or lots of both, or in some cases even relationships if you're not careful.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
If you were to, like, you know, just sitting down and as you and I were talking earlier, you know, if I were your client, right, what would you say to the audience out there as they're going through the process, Mark, of thinking about hiring someone like you? What would you say to them? What would you look for in a client that is really sort of struggling with whether or not to do this?
The first thing is, do you feel like your interests, strengths, passions, talents are aligned properly with what you're doing on a daily basis?
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think causes the most stress when there's misalignment. People don't even realize there's a misalignment. And instead of leaping out of bed every morning saying, I can't wait to get to work and do these things I love doing, they're trudging out of bed going, oh, another day of administrative hassle.
Yeah, I got to do this again.
Right. So that's the first thing. And it's like, you know, you take through the whole day. What do you do on a typical day? Let's go through that, and what things energize you, what things de-energize you. And the more activities you're doing that are energizing, the more likely it is you're doing things that are contributing to your business that are going to make you successful. And so a lot of what I do is aligning the, you know, what people want to be doing with what contributes to their business.
I always found that, you know, that sounds a lot to me like the beginning of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when Steve Covey starts to talk about writing your own personal constitution.
Right.
And the difficulty that a lot of people have in doing that, Mark, where, you know, they're not really sure what that means. What are you talking about? Like, it was really interesting, this example I was giving you earlier where I was talking to this fellow who sold this gigantic company to some big brands. And he said, you know, I lost my identity. He lost his identity.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, Mark, is that that's not really his identity. His identity is really what drives him, that North Star.
Exactly.
Is that an obstacle oftentimes when you're dealing with especially executives who are high pressure, right?
Yeah.
Go-getters,
Yep.
like high D's on a disc model.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do assessments like that. That's part of what I do is all the assessments like that and a few other ones. You're absolutely right. You hit it on hit the nail on the head with that one, Mark, because when you're looking at sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, the personal constitution and the North Star and everything. Yeah.
So people have to understand that when they're going through, when your identity is wrapped up in your work, right? And I had that same issue.
I'm
by the
sure.
way.
I'm sure.
Whole identity.
We all do.
And then what happens? There's some random layoff.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with your performance.
Nope.
And now what happens? You go into a spiral.
You're right.
So that is just, and that's part of what what I help people with is you're not your work,
Yeah.
right? You are. That's why you have these North Star values.
Yep.
So if something happens, you got some vicissitudes and some bad things happen at work, like you still have that value
Yep.
and that North Star that you're going for.
Yep. I love it. Love having you, man. Love having you.
Love being here, Mark.
Yeah. Inspiration, where does it come from? Where does that inspiration for Mark Style come from?
I gotta say, it's helping others solve the problems. It really that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. It gives me goosebumps. Just listening to you say that, because you could see it in your face, you could see it in your eyes. You love doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I do it for friends all the time, family members. It doesn't matter if I'm being paid or not being paid. It's just something I love doing.
Yeah.
I have conversations with people, doing networking. So many times, an hour goes by. I'm only talking about them.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I forgot to talk about you.
Yeah,
Well,
what do
that's
you do?
okay.
Right, exactly.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm so interested in what you're doing, and I want to help you. I forget about myself.
Well, we had about 30 minutes of you talking about mostly you today.
I know
a lot of me, but a lot of you. So thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Tell everyone in this camera right there how to get in touch with Mark Style,
This
please.
camera?
Yep.
So you can reach me at M as in Mark, Style, STYLE, at On The Mark Advisors, advisors with an O.com. You can also go to my website, which has just been revamped, at onthemarkadvisors.com, and you can also reach me at LinkedIn at Mark Style.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
All right,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
a pleasure. My pleasure. All right, you saw that contact sheet up there, right? So that was pretty cool. It was a good picture. I don't know who took that. It looked like it was Photoshop.
Oh yeah, I spent like a year doctoring that one.
Check out Mark Style on LinkedIn, On The Mark Advisors, folks. Thanks for joining us on Rainmakers Roundup. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon.